And we turn now to our political panel. Peggy Noonan is a columnist for the Wall Street Journal and a CBS News contributor. John Heilemann is the co-managing editor of Bloomberg Politics. Gwen Ifill is the co-anchor of the Newshour on PBS, as well as the moderator and managing editor of Washington Week. And Peter Baker is the White House correspondent for the New York Times. Welcome to all of you. We've got a lot of numbers here. Let's start with the Democratic race. John, let me start with you. Hillary Clinton is behind. Bernie Sanders is ahead. Martin O'Malley doesn't really show up in the polls. He's at 5% in Iowa, but in New Hampshire and South Carolina, in our poll, he's not showing up. What is the situation for Hillary Clinton right now?
The situation is not great for Hillary Clinton right now. It's not just that. I mean, the numbers in your poll are now take us another step, the same trajectory, which is she has been losing altitude consistently now for the last 6 months in the two first states in the nomination contest. It's true what David Axelrod said. They are unique in the sense that they are almost all white in both states. And so Bernie Sanders has a kind of purchase in those states that he might not have in more demographically diverse states. But those are two really big, important states. And if you were the front runner, the inevitable front runner, and you're now losing ground every day in those states and seeing Bernie Sanders rise in those states, and you can see what's going on underneath those numbers, which is lack of enthusiasm, questions about her honesty and trustworthiness. Those are all bad omens for her. It's not over by any means, but she is headed in the wrong direction.
When Hillary Clinton tried to reverse that direction this week by apologizing for having one email account, for not having two email accounts. There were some reports in the paper about efforts to increase authenticity, which a word we're all trying to figure out what that really means. How did she do on that front on reversing?
It must make her crazy to have David Axelrod be her defender because he's the one who helped to take her down in 2008. She's not doing particularly well on that front, but also we have to look beyond what we see in these first polls, especially with Joe Biden included. We all know from experience that you're always at your strongest before you get in the race. So he hasn't done a thing except anguish on national television, hugely sympathetic. But of course that takes away from her, especially with the questions. I thought it was interesting, however, in the poll that people say it's not the email controversy. That means it's something else, and that's what she's got to worry about.
Which might even be harder to fix, because you can turn over a server, you can say you're sorry, but if it's something else, that's hard to.
Yeah.
Peggy, David Axelrod said Hillary Clinton needs to untether herself. How does a person untether themselves?
Well, I wasn't sure what he meant. Untether herself from what? From this sort of leaden, predictable, defensive persona in which she's very self-protective, or I wasn't sure if that was exactly it. Let me tell you what I think is most remarkable about what we're discussing here. Mrs. Clinton has been operating at the highest level of American politics for a quarter century now. And we're talking about her second presidential campaign or attempt to get a nomination, and we're still saying things like authenticity and you should show your warmth and humor. What an extraordinary thing that in a quarter century we still have to have that conversation. They were saying it 20 years ago. To me, this all just is starting to feel like 2008 again. The inevitable candidate starts to look evitable. And I think if Biden got in, I must tell you, I think within 2 or 3 days, he'd be up 20 points. I think he'd be such a serious contender.
I want to get to authenticity in a minute, but Peter, since you spend so much time thinking about White Houses, and these campaigns are supposed to tell us something about candidates and how they would handle these situations, it is familiar in a White House to have a huge firestorm and everybody kind of hunkers down. And so they have to adjust, but not adjust so much, and David Axelrod talked about this, adjust so much that they go haywire. What do we learn? What do we know about Hillary Clinton as a president from what we've learned of the way they've handled this?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Look, the Clintons have been through this, as you say, so many times. Scandal, recovery, setback of some sort. And they're good at it. They're the leading rebounders in American politics over the last 2 decades. So we should not, as John said, count her out by any stretch. If you look at the 2022 candidates or whatever who are running for president, the one person you'd still want to be if you were running is probably still Hillary Clinton. She has the best organization and money and position despite her problems.
And name recognition.
And name recognition. But the problems are important, and they do tell you something about how she would be as president. She's reluctant to admit mistakes. We talk talk about authenticity, I think the authentic Hillary Clinton is the one who said she wasn't sorry, because I don't think she was. She said, I did the right thing. I was allowed to do it. What's the problem? And she resists advice to say something otherwise.
I'll tell you how you don't project authenticity. You don't project it by having your campaign tell the world you're going to project authenticity, and then talk to reporters about how you decided that you were going to project authenticity on the basis of some focus groups you did. That is the way you don't project authenticity. I'll tell you one way. Way you do. That did happen with Hillary Clinton this week. One way you do project authenticity is you go on Stephen Colbert, as Joe Biden did this week, and you give an interview like that comes across as, to everyone who watched it, as human, real. Gwen used the word anguished, but funny at points. That again, whether you like Joe Biden or not, you couldn't watch that interview and not say, that's the real deal. That's what Joe Biden is like. That's a human being I can relate to.